You're listening to the Drinks and a Movie podcast, hosted by Rudy Ruiz.
Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Drinks and a Movie podcast. I've got a special guest with me here today, new to the show. We got a documentary filmmaker here. We're going to be talking about his new film, Making Santa Real. So I've got Brandon Rice with me. Brandon, thanks for joining so we can talk about your film.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about it. And in the middle of, the spring season, talk about a movie that has to do with Christmas.
Yeah.
And Santa Claus and stuff.
Hey.
But I especially am excited to have some whiskey with you tonight. So
yeah,
that'll
man.
be fun.
Same. I decided I'm going to pour the Nelson Brothers honey cask. I haven't had this one in a while. I think this was the one from a few years ago. That's a little on the sweeter end. I'm just going to pour a little bit. We got 107.2 proof.
Yeah, those Nelson's honeys are always good. Actually, it's funny because my glass is the old Belmead bourbon logo, if you can see it.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then it has the bees on it. So it's from when they did the honey cask with the Belmead stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm actually drinking not Nelson's tonight. I'm drinking Penelope bourbon. And it has a fun story. So first of all, a good portion of the movie is shot in Santa Claus, Indiana. And of course, this is MGP, which is from Indiana. So I thought that would be kind of cool. And a buddy of mine who happened to be co-cinematographer with me bought this for me. So kind of a lot of cool connections there.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm drinking that tonight. And I still have it in the Belmead cup.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Nice. Cheers, man. Yeah, that's good. I like Penelope Toasted. I haven't had that one in a while. But I remember really liking it. For a second, I thought you were going to pull out Old Saint Nick. I've never had it, but I know that's a brand. And I didn't even think about it until right before you brought that out.
Yeah, but that'd be a great tie-in. Yeah. It's a little more on the obscure. I had to explain it. More explanation needed. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's chat about this movie.
So yeah, you sent it my way to check out, so I appreciate that, getting to watch it. And I mean, I guess for the audience, I'll throw it to you to kind of, or maybe I'll throw out the synopsis as like the viewer, right? So, so your documentary is saying I watched it a couple weeks ago, so I might be not fresh on the details, but it's basically about all these different kind of performers, if I can call them that portray Santa Claus throughout the Christmas season. And they just kind of really get into detail, not just Santa Claus, but Mrs. Santa Claus and kind of all this lore. And they get into a lot of detail about just, what it means to take on that role and being like a positive kind of influence on children and maybe even adults alike, like keeping the kind of spirit of like Christmas and just, good times alive. Is that a decent enough synopsis?
Oh, yeah.
I'll throw it to you now. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. Yeah. And the origin of how this kind of came about, I'll just jump in right there, because people like to know, well, why did you make a Santa Claus documentary? So I have always just enjoyed Christmas in general. Obviously, Santa Claus being a big part of Christmas and that icon that that is. I don't know. There's a lot of mystery to Santa Claus, and my wife and I'm going to tell the long story since we got time. My wife and I were on this this train ride with Saint Nick. It was kind of this. It was a little hokey, but it was fun, and it was getting close to Christmas time, and so we decided to do this. It had a few cocktails involved, so we were like, okay, we're game, So Santa Claus comes on and is doing pictures with us and stuff. And he's just hamming it up with everybody, and it's a train car full of adults. We're all, we've had a couple drinks, so we're having a good time. And he's just, posing with us and everything. And he breaks character for, a few minutes. I don't even remember exactly why he did, but he just broke character. I think I liked his tattoos because he had naughty and nice on his arms tattooed. And I was kind of mentioning that. And he was like, oh, yeah. And he was talking about how he's, from a long line of Santa Claus performers and how he went to Santa Claus school and all this stuff. And I was just like, wait, what? There's a Santa Claus school and there's all this lore involved. And you kind of just think it's a guy who puts on a suit and just, does this thing for some extra side money or whatever, And I was like, this is so interesting. So I kept asking him questions and kept kind of prying into what goes on with this whole like world of Santa Claus. And I wrote it down on a phone app, like a notes, app on my phone. And I was like, this has to be a documentary, like I have to make this at some point. And that was probably, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago now. And it kind of stayed in the back of my mind for a long time. And then I was kind of just like, I hadn't done any like creative projects that were just my own for a long time, just like my film. So last year, I think it was around probably like early March, I was like, I need to revisit that Santa Claus thing. And it was actually my buddy, Patty, who got me this bottle of whiskey. He showed me this little, he's also a filmmaker. He's my co-cinematographer. He showed me this little clip of a kind of a mini doc he was working on with like a local musician. And he like made some, he was like kind of a artisanal craftsman and stuff. And it was such a cool like little piece. And I was like, I should just like make this Santa Claus. Like it kind of, you get inspired by other people sometimes and you're like, oh, you know what? This was awesome. Like, why can't I do stuff, with my idea? So I reached out that week to people I found online. I just literally Googled Santa Claus, schools, performers, etc. And I just shot out emails to a bunch of people. And within like that day, I was getting responses back. People like, oh yeah, let's get on the phone. Let's talk. I would love to know more about your project. And I'm like, oh shoot, now I have to like actually figure out what this is titled, like a synopsis, because I had like just an idea. So I was like, okay. So I sat down and tried to write some stuff out, had Zoom calls the next weekend with a bunch of Santas, and then found out there was a Santa family reunion coming to Gatlinburg, I'm in Nashville. So it was 3.5 hours away from me. And there was going to be like several hundred Santa Claus performers and Mrs. Claus in attendance. And I was like, oh, this would be awesome. I could get a bunch of interviews there and like, meet all these people, get some cool content. So we ended up making arrangements to go there, and it just kind of like went from there. It just created itself as I started talking to Santas and learning more about what they do, and just really trying to like immerse myself in what they do as much as I can without, I had no interest in becoming a Santa myself, but I wanted to just know more about it, the history and all of this kind of stuff, which we've got some really nice history pieces in there about famous Santas that have come before the current people who are doing it. So yeah, it was just it kind of just created itself. I feel like a good documentary does that, where it's just like you start to come, you have an idea, and then you start to gather stuff, and then it just kind of writes itself. And then we ended up at Santa Claus, Indiana with an event there in the summertime. And then we ended up back in upstate New York shooting some stuff at the Christmas cottage that a guy has up there. He actually ended up being one of our associate producers. He was so gracious with his time to help us out. And so, yeah, it kind of just snowballed from there. And I mean, it was such a small project. Like I'm still kind of shocked that we got it done because it was basically me and my wife, a couple of the Santas helping us get connections, my buddy Patty, who helped with some of the lighting and stuff and shooting, and then our composer, and then just me editing it, putting it together and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's been a wild ride, but it's been a lot of fun. So it's weird to live Santa for an entire year.
Yeah.
I will say that. So.
Yeah, man. No, I really admire like the filmmaking behind it, just the kind of go-getter attitude and all that. I'm always trying to find like an interesting kind of documentary thing to do, and it doesn't always, I mean, I got one kind of looming, like a short piece, but we'll see how that all turns out. But I thought too, man, like watching it was interesting because I had no clue there was this kind of whole like almost subculture of this where it's like such a big thing and there's so many people that are doing this, playing this character, and it's so like important to them. And I really liked getting kind of the insight into, the why. Like we get a lot of anecdotes, a lot of stories from your kind of subjects within the movie that let us in on like, oh yeah, this is kind of important. And I'll be honest, it did get me a little nostalgic at moments where I'm like, man, I find myself missing the magic of Christmas sometimes, like as an
Hmm.
adult just trying to survive when it comes to that time. I'm like, oh man, I can't afford
Yeah.
any of this,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like it kind
Yeah.
of took me back to like, man, you know what it is? I remember when it felt that way, the way these people are describing and what they get back from these all these kids and these young people,
Yeah. Yeah.
um so I thought that was all really good. I really like too that you have a moment in there that's like kind of an animated
Oh
story. Like
yeah.
like
Yeah.
who created that for you? I thought that was like one, I think it was a really like touching story, but I like how it kind of breaks it up from like your, kind of casual interviews that you see like
Hmm.
through documentaries we get like in the middle, this kind of animated sequence. How did that come about and who created that?
Yeah, so that was something that I had always kind of envisioned some kind of animation or storybook like part of the movie. And I knew we were going to get some really good stories as I started to, pre-interview these Santas and Mrs. Claus characters. I was like, oh, we're going to get some really good stories. So as I was starting to piece it together, I realized, oh, we need animation here. I actually did what every low budget filmmaker does and I went to Fiverr and I found an animator on there who it's funny because I didn't do the animation myself yet. I felt like I did because it was so difficult because I think it was someone from a foreign country who I was
Mm.
speaking to. So, English was second language and stuff, and trying to explain, like sending pictures and like say, okay, the little girl needs to do this now. And just trying to like get it because they had the audio, that went with it, but they didn't quite understand all of the concepts translating from like English to what they were doing.
Right.
So I will say that we went back and forth at least 25 times on the whole thing to like get it to where I was like, okay, this is good now. It works. And it turned out I was really happy how it turned out. It like has like this cross between like a storybook style and like almost like a Pixar. It's like
Mm.
almost like a merging of them, and that's exactly what I wanted. Because at first they were trying to do more like 3D animation style animation, and it just felt too like clean. I don't know if that makes sense, but like it
Yeah.
just didn't have like the storybook, kind of
Yeah.
vibe to it. So yeah, that was a lot of fun to do, and also frustrating. We'll
Yeah.
say at one point I was like, we're not even gonna get this thing. Like it's forget it. Like we're just gonna have to stick with like pictures or something like
Yeah.
that. So but I'm really happy how it turned out. And the lady who tells that story, Susan, she has seen a lot of the like pieces of animation as well because I wanted to show her as
Mm.
because I even had to get a picture of her younger self because she's talking about it now, but it's from when she was a younger person. So I had to get pictures of that, her in the outfit, which it matches perfectly, which is really cool. Stuff like that. So that was a blast to do. And then just I will say one of the things that I found the most difficult, kind of just jumping off of that, is there were so many good stories that these people had that bring Santa to life, and it was hard to decide what to include and not include because you want to include everything because it's just I mean there some are heartbreaking, some are just like funny, like it runs the gamut. And to your point, I think what I wanted to communicate with the film was that these are real people bringing Santa to life, and they have real emotions too when they're having these moments and these experiences with kids, adults, etc. And it was really hard to figure out what to include and what to not include. That there was times where I was like, oh, I got to cut this whole story out because like it just doesn't flow or whatever. But it's like it's so good, it's so compelling. And eventually, I'm gonna probably release a lot of that stuff like online, like as clips and stuff like that, just
Yeah.
because it's just too good. And honestly, like just out of respect for them sharing,
Mm.
these things because they're personal, they're personal
Yeah.
like moments that nobody else would be able to hear except for if had they shared them. And yeah, it was really neat. And I think I gained new respect for the representation of the character and not just what it means to the people who experience it, because it means different things to everybody, but what it means to the people portraying the character and like that they take it so seriously. It's not just like putting on a suit. It's not just making a quick buck. It's like it's pretty deep. And like there's not a lot of things in life that can be that deep anymore. I feel like, it's just with the hustle and bustle, even in the Christmas season, like you said earlier, we just get so caught up. And I don't know, it made me like pause and like think about it a lot, so, and approach things differently.
Yeah. No, I mean, that definitely comes through, I think, in the movie for sure. I like kind of starting it in the beginning. I honestly was a little like, okay, we're just talking Santas and all that, but as it kind of progresses and you get brought into, these stories and everything, it gets like kind of emotional at times, which I think is, a great beat to hit for the audience, of course. And I wanted to ask, I mean, you're talking about like stuff to cut because I do film stuff too. I edit and
Mhm.
so for me watching it, I can't help but look at it through that lens where I'm just like, man, how many interviews did he do? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
how
yeah.
long was it? And if you don't mind sharing, like about how much time did you spend with each of your subjects? Because there's like quite a few of them. You go from a lot of different people, so I'm curious like how much you got out of every single character to put this together.
Yeah, I would say the average interview length was probably anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
And then I believe we had all total either 16 or 17 interviews. So it was a lot of content.
Yeah.
Obviously, like some of it was like overlapping where, they were kind of answering the same questions.
Yeah.
But then a lot of it was just very, very different. And I will say, one thing about Santas and Mrs. Claus, they love to talk. Like if you get them talking, like they will go. It was not hard for us to get these really great, long, dense answers, which as a filmmaker, you love because you can then take the pieces you need and kind of make it happen. But it did end up having a lot on the cutting room floor. Unfortunately, like I said, there was so many good even threads of story that we could have gone different directions and stuff. And I think one of the things, and I was talking to another filmmaker friend of mine recently about this, is my method. I should say, and I preach this. I should practice it more often, and I did in this case, which was very good. I gave myself 1 year to finish the film, and I said, in 1 year, this has got to be completely done. Like from the time, so we started March 29th. 2025. And currently, I have it on my calendar to finish the final sound mix pass March 29th, 2026. So, which is on Sunday.
Yeah.
But you can cut that out if this gets released later. But, so basically, I wanted to give myself that deadline, self-imposed, because I feel like so many people, including myself, will start a project, write a script, whatever, and just it never gets done because, something comes in the way or whatever. And I was like, you know what, even if this documentary is crap, like I got it done. Like that's to me was the goal, was to get it done. And then even if it wasn't, and I didn't think it was ever going to be like complete crap, but like, even if it wasn't going to go anywhere outside of just the Santas seeing it and giving it back to them. And honestly, as a gift, that was going to be all I needed, and to finish it. So that was kind of a self-imposed thing. And then when I got into editing, I decided that I would just start editing. Like I didn't know what we were going to do, where it was going to go, what the structure was going to be. I just was like, we got all these interviews. Let's just start putting them down on the timeline, seeing what we got. And I didn't even have the Santa Claus, Indiana trip planned until I was already starting to edit. And then I didn't even know the ending of the film, which also is the beginning. Spoiler alert. I didn't even know the ending of the film with going to Buffalo, New York, and filming the Christmas cottage and all that. I didn't know that was going to happen until a month before we shot it, which was in November, 3 days before my child was born, also, which was crazy. Yeah. It was crazy. But literally, it was just this very organic thing. I just started, and then I was like, where's this going? Where's this going? And I was just like working out, trying to figure out cutting, adding, etc. And I realized, we're traveling to different places. So we traveled to Santa Claus, Indiana at minute 24. We traveled to Gatlinburg at like minute 47, I want to say, something like that. And then we traveled to New York again at like, I think 1 hour and 5 minutes or something like that. So we have these like little beats essentially throughout the film where we're traveling to new places, and it really breaks it up. And I had never even anticipated when I started this that was going to be, part of the structure of this thing. It just kind of happened. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Great. So,
yeah, no, that's interesting, because I was about to ask, like, my next question was going to be, how did you kind of, I guess, outline it when you decided you were going to take it on and you started to get in contact with them? But I mean, I imagine you had something, right? Because you knew what questions to ask them.
Yes.
And all that.
Yes.
So,
yeah, we kind of had like that. I think what was important was knowing the premise, which was, instead of make it a document, because I'd seen some other documentaries about Santas, and it had been either traveling around with Santas, like, who had interesting lives, which is cool, or it was a person who wanted to become a Santa, which was also cool, but not this documentary, or it was like just history stuff and things like that, which we wanted to include, but we didn't want it to be only that part of it. And so when we were interviewing people, my wife actually helped a lot with the producing of it. And so we sat down and we're like, okay, what questions can we ask that get to the heart of, what does it mean for you to be Santa? What does it mean for, what are you getting back? What are you giving? What is like the heart? The heart of Santa was the documentary. Like, what is the heart of Santa? Which is charity, goodwill, love, all these things, and belief in something bigger than ourselves, things like that. And even if it doesn't even have to be a deity, it can be just the idea of charity. I mean, that's bigger than a single person, So, there was a lot that we worked through to try to get to that premise. And I think as soon as we had the premise, all the questions flowed from there. And then we did some like basic questions of like, how did you get into it? What are memories you have? Things like that would lead into more. And my wife did all of the interviews, the first initial set of interviews that we did at that convention. And that really helped because she was able to take their answers and she's really good at interviewing, which I'm grateful she was there. I was handling all the technical stuff and she was taking care of the interview stuff, because she was able to take their answers and kind of ask additional questions and like, suss things out and get more from each person, which was really cool. So, and then once we had that, I mean, that was like 12 of our 16 interviews, I think, or something like that. And so we had a lot of them already in the can at that point. And then we could kind of look and say, okay, what do we have now? What do we need? Basically, right. So, which was really neat. And then I was like worried about it because I was like, oh man, it's going to be so boring with all these interviews shot. Oh man, I got to tell you another side story. We had this super tiny room to shoot in, like, I mean, and it was like narrow too. Oh man, I've got these behind the scenes pictures and it doesn't even do it justice. It was so small. And I was just like, I did everything I could to make it look okay. But I was just like, oh, this looks like we're in a closet. It really does, And I was really worried about it. But then we were able to get other interviews in other places. And also what I tried to do is I tried to break it up with like a lot of photos that they were able to provide me and things like that. So it wouldn't get stale, just like looking at the same backgrounds all the time, and things like that. But just the fact that we were able to get in 2 days, I think either 10 or 12 interviews was just amazing, because our content was we just had a ton of hours and hours of stuff, which was really cool. And then we could shoot on like expo floor. We got like full access to that. We could shoot like some of their sessions and stuff like that. We had full access to that. And then we ended up being able to sprinkle, some of that stuff throughout. So, but yeah, I went off on a million tangents. Sorry about that. But,
no, you're good.
But it's kind of like a stream of consciousness. And this is the first time I've done like a formal interview about this. So this is new for me too. So
yeah, I think the interview setup I really liked was, and it definitely wasn't lost on me. I know exactly the space you're talking about. I was like, I understand being in those situations for sure, and you just got to make it work. But one like just shot I really liked that I thought was like really great throughout was It looks like you guys are in a church, like they're sitting at pews and it's a four shot. So there's like one dude in one pew, and then you got, I think it was three other guys. And you had like
Yeah.
multiple angles on it, but there's like a really nice, like wide you have of all four of them that like
Mhm.
every time it went to that, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a great looking frame here.
Yeah. Yeah. We got really lucky with that church, man. Like I knew we wanted to do some more interviews when we were in Santa Claus, Indiana. And Phil, the guy who is the one kind of asking the questions and
Mhm.
stuff, who's sitting in the front pew, he was like, well, why don't we make it be a discussion versus like sit down interviews, because we can get it through it quicker. We can let these guys go. And it is just a different thing,
Yeah.
And I was like, great. So he wanted to do it outside at first. And they were having like another event there at the museum that day. And I was like, it's going to be way too loud outside. Like we can't, it's going to be totally distracting. There's going to be people running around, kids running around. And I got into the church where they were holding some other events and stuff. And I was like, what if when they're done, we come in here and do it in the church? And I was like, and he was like, sure. And I was like, sound is good. It looks awesome. Like, and it also connects to Christmas with like,
Mhm.
the nativity stuff and all that. And I was like, this is like, without being like over the top, like, like kind of
Yeah.
preachy. It was just aesthetically perfect. And I was like, this is great. So I really appreciate you saying that, because it was one of those ones that kind of happened by accident. But, as a filmmaker, it's like you have to think on your feet in those situations and just be like, even like the interview we set up for Patricia Cook. She was the one who, her dad was, a famous Santa and stuff.
Mhm.
The older lady. I literally had like 5 minutes to set up that interview. Like I thought she was going to come like an hour later, and Phil calls me and goes, so she's ready for her interview now. And I'm like, okay, well, I got one light over here and I have one mic and two cameras. I guess I'll get it set up.
Yeah.
She's walking in, and I hand her like the release form to sign up, fill out. So occupies for a little longer so I can set everything up. I was just like, oh man. So my wife literally comes in and I'm like, we're interviewing her now. And she's like, oh, okay. So she like sits down, it was just crazy. And her interview ended up being one of the best ones we have,
Yeah.
And it was just incredible how that all happened. So
Yeah, definitely been in those situations many times. And
yep.
luckily that aspect of it doesn't come through in the movie at all. It looks
That's good.
like it looks under control and everything's all good. And
Yeah.
that's like, I know I always worry about like, oh damn, the camera's not leveled or whatever the
Yeah,
case
right.
may be.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
something silly like that. How long was the editing process for you? Like, I mean, 16 interviews, like minimum 45 minutes each. That's a ton of footage. Like, how'd you
Yeah.
go about starting that workflow?
Yeah, it did take a long time. And I think it was just more doing a little at a time, like just like a couple hours here, a couple hours there, just working through it. What I tried to do is I tried to go through each interview at least once, like full, like listen to it again in full. Um, the cool thing is that I was there for every interview. So I already had this kind of like latent memory,
Mm.
where, it's like, oh yeah, I remember such and such said this, and I definitely want to pull that. And so I went through every interview and listened through them, and then I would like make marks of like spots I really liked, and then I would just start pulling stuff in, and kind of like almost like a puzzle where you're like, oh, hey, this kind of connects to this
Mm.
connects here. And then I started creating sections where it's like, okay, they're going to talk about stories they experienced with Santa when they were younger, to start kind of just chronologically.
Mhm.
Oh, now they're going to talk about like kind of what got them into it. Now they're going to talk about like moments that like solidified it for them. And then, oh, we're going to pause and do history here. Just like it just kind of started to create itself. But as far as like the time, it was such a, because it's not my full-time job. So I was trying to do
Right.
it on nights and weekends when I could. We had a baby on the way. So it was kind of like, oh man, there's pressure, to kind of get it done
Yeah.
as much as I could before that, before he came. And so it was really just a lot of weekends, just sitting down at the computer, working on it. But it was seriously like an hour here, 2 hours there. Like, I mean, it was hard. It's always hard when you're doing something that you're not doing as like your main thing,
Yeah.
to sit down for a day and like do
Mhm.
it. And there was a day or two where I would, take off from the day job, or a weekend day where I was like, I'm just going to set aside 5 or 6 hours and just sit down and work on it. Things like that. But it was just kind of this, like, I couldn't even tell you exactly how long it took, because it was just, it was so many, things.
Yeah.
And then of course, once, we started doing animation stuff and the score and all of that, then I had to be giving notes. So I couldn't just be editing it. I had to then be directing, essentially,
right.
like all these things. So, there was a lot, and then planning for even the final shoot. I mean, the final shoot happening, in November, and wanting to also still finish it up by the, towards the beginning of the year to start putting it into festivals and stuff like that. So, it was pretty crazy, like planning all that logistically. And then, my buddy Patty was able to go out there with me and shoot the final, like, couple scenes and stuff like that. But it was just, it was a process, man. It's one of those things. And I talked to a buddy of mine and I, in high school and early college years, made a lot of short films. And that was kind of what got me into the film industry and loving filmmaking and stuff like that. And we'll always reflect on the fact that, like, we did so much when we were young because we didn't know any better. Like, we just went out and did it, and we didn't give a shit. We were just like, whatever, like, it's not going to be great, but we're going to do it and we're going to have fun. And we didn't take it that seriously. And I feel like the older I've gotten, the more I feel like if I'm going to step out creatively, it has to be really good. And I feel like that holds me back so much. And I'm sure I
relate to that
before
100%.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you just have to not give a shit and just go see what happens. Because generally, like, with the experience you've gained over the years, it's not going to be shit. It might not be the, next Star Wars or whatever, but who cares? Like, there is never going to be a next Star Wars. So whatever. But you just go out and do it and have fun and, like, enjoy. I think that's the thing, enjoying the process. I told another friend of mine, I said, if nothing comes of this, I've enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing. It's like, if you've enjoyed doing it, you've learned something along the way, which I've learned a whole lot. Not just the content of the film, but even just filmmaking itself. And I've relearned things that I've forgotten because I haven't had to use them for a long time because I've been too scared to do it,
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's just something fun about just going out and seeing what the hell you can do. So.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good mindset to have. That's something that a friend of mine and I are, like, actively trying to get back to. We have those same conversations, of like, man, we used to just, like, make stuff to make it, and now it almost becomes a chore because, like you said, it becomes too precious and it, like, almost isn't fun anymore. And then there is, like you kind of talked about it, when you have to also balance it with, like, your day job and other responsibilities and things you need to do. And now it's like, okay, I want to edit this thing. Well, I'm going to be up till 4 a.m. doing this, like, after all the other things I absolutely have to do. Yeah, so I can relate to that. I think a lot of people can. And it's very admirable because, you're an example of someone who did, in fact, do it, just went out and got it done. And I think that's awesome. Like, setting the goal, to get it by that time, was a good move, I think. And yeah, that's really excellent, man.
Yeah, I think self-imposed deadlines, they suck for sure.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, it's yourself kicking yourself in the butt to be like, hey, let's get this done,
Yeah.
So, because I mean, there's been so many projects that, even scripts I've written where I'm like, oh, I'm going to produce it this year. I'm going to do this. And then there's this one script, for instance, the short film script. I think it's like 20 pages, and I've wanted to produce it for probably 8 years. And I've just always had a reason I couldn't do it, whether it was a budget or logistical or whatever. And with this one, I was like, you know what? There's no reason I can't do this. Like, I have everything. I have the tools. I have, the equipment. I have the ability to contact these people. I can travel to where they, basically my most expensive thing was travel. Like, that was the most, what I paid for the most, because I had all the equipment, thankfully, already. I bought a few things, but nothing crazy.
Yeah.
And I was able to just, do it on a really small budget and just make it happen, and I even was able to get my buddy Justin to do the score, which I think the score sets it apart even more for a documentary, because I feel like a lot of documentaries use, like, which isn't bad. Catalog music, like, you know, licensed music and stuff. Having an original score and something that's like memorable is really cool.
Yeah,
And
I wanted to
he
bring
did a
that
great
up
job.
next,
Yeah.
actually, was like the score. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I thought it really it stood out to me in a really good way. Like I was definitely kind of paying attention to like, yeah, there's some good music here, and it sounds good. It adds a lot of extra like character and everything. And like you said, it's easy to just go to, you know, story blocks or something and get something very
Hmm.
stock, you know, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I thought the music was really well done. So I was going to ask if that was like a friend of yours, like, or if it was another kind of you outsourced it, but sounds
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
someone you've known for a while.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just give you a quick little nutshell story on Justin and I. Justin Durbin is the composer of the film, and he and I go way back to 2006, actually, which is crazy, 20 years ago now. And I did this film called Smuggler's Ransom, and I think it was 20 or 21 at the time. It was like a 50-minute film, action film, and me and my buddy Daniel, we co-directed it, and we were looking for someone to do the score because it was too good not to have a score. Like it was, you know, it ended up being a really good piece. It's doesn't quite hold up, you know, shot on standard definition, you know, these types of things, you know, but at the time you're like, oh, you know, as 20-year-olds, I mean, this is pretty badass, you know?
Yeah.
So we reached out. I had been on this forum, and you probably know this forum, dvxuser.com, and an old school web forum for filmmakers. And he was a member there, and he had done some shorts, and he was a composer and all this kind of stuff. So I reached out to him and I said, hey man, like we've got like no money, but like it's a pretty badass movie, and I think you'd have a good time scoring it. You know, basically give us like the cheapest. I think he ended up charging us like $800 or so. It was like some insanely cheap price, right? And of course, at the time, that was like a big part of the budget. You know, I was like, oh man, shit, like $800. But we went ahead and he scored it, and it was awesome. Like even to this day, I still have the soundtrack. I think it's super cool. It's an 80s movie, so it has kind of an 80s vibe to it and all that kind of stuff. So he and I worked together on some other shorts and stuff like that. And I always told him, I said, you know, if I ever make a feature, I want you to score it. And so I didn't really know. This was probably back in, I want to say, it was before we shot the ending. So it was probably like September or October of last year. And I didn't really know what we were going to do with music yet. So I was kind of like throwing around the idea of like doing it myself, licensing it out, you know, finding stuff on Soundstripe or MusicBed or whatever, and just, you know, figuring it out. But then you've got some legalities on like, what if it gets distributed? Like what, you know, there's different stuff going on there. And so I decided to reach out to him because I was like, you know, why not? Like, it's worth a shot, you know? And I was like, look, I don't want to like pay you nothing because like you're a good buddy. I know you did this for a living, you know, your work is amazing. So he was able to work out a really cool deal for us, and charge way below rates that he should have, honestly, and just put out an awesome score. I knew as soon as I heard the first track, I was like, oh shit, like this is going to bring the movie up a level. Yeah. And really like stand out, like you said, in like a good way. It's memorable. It has this like very whimsical, Christmassy, but not like over the top Christmassy like vibe to it. And yeah, it adds so much depth, I think, to the film. And because I've seen a lot of documentaries now that I'm in the space that use, you know, like stock music, and you can tell because you're like, oh yeah, I've heard the same track going on 5 minutes now, you know, like it's not changing, like it's just the same thing. And even when he uses a similar motif throughout the movie, it's like always with a different riff or a different instrument or whatever, and it just keeps it interesting. And even though there's music throughout most of the movie, it never gets where it's like, oh, it's the same thing again, you know? Which if you use stock music, unfortunately it's just gonna be, you know. And I'm just so grateful that he was able to get on board, and like he adds a lot to the movie. And he's just super talented dude. I'm just giving him a plug now. If any filmmakers are watching this, listening to this, you need a score, Justin R. Durbin, make sure you hit him up because he is awesome. So Yeah, fantastic, and just a good guy in general. So.
Yeah. And when it came to the music, did you brief him on like, oh, I want like specific sounds, or were you just like, hey, you're gonna kind of figure it out when you see what it is, kind of
Yeah.
thing, or were you pretty specific on what you wanted?
Both things. So like he really likes the way he works is he likes to have a temp score so he knows where music needs to go, which makes sense, like timing wise and stuff. And so we because it was kind of like this like organic living thing when he came on board, I sent him an early cut and I was like, here, at least watch this. And he sent me a bunch of his music so I could use his music to temp it. So it at least had the same feel of stuff he's done before. And so I put it in there and then I sent him a cut and he was able to, start kind of writing some music. But then of course, like it's a rough cut. So timing's changing. And I frustrated him at some points because I was like, oh, hey, like, I think this is the final cut. And then I would send it and I'd be like, well, actually, I made these changes actually. And then I would send it and it would change the timing even just a little bit. But, for music, it's like it's hitting beats and cues and stuff. So it's like, he had to shift things around. And so I kind of just let him run wild. And then once we got kind of the real final, cut and everything, there's a few things that I was like, for instance, the ending, he had this really, it was great because all his music is great. So it's never bad music, but it was like this very almost like too subtle of an ending piece where it was like very understated, which was cool. It was interesting because it was like, oh, this moment is kind of quiet with these kids in a way. And it's like this like peaceful moment. But then I was like, it feels like it's missing like a dramatic, this is the moment we've been talking about the whole movie. Finally meeting Santa, finally seeing Santa. And then, a spoiler alert, you see Santa at the end. But I was working with him and I was like, I really think we got to approach the ending piece. It was kind of like the last like 5 minutes of music. I was like, I feel like it really needs to build. He was able to use a lot of what he had done and written, but just kind of tweaking it and working it out. And he's always so gracious. And like, it's funny because we barely ever, I think we talked on the phone like twice the whole time, but everything else was text messages and frame my own notes and all this kind of stuff. And he just does a really good job of like figuring out what I'm looking for. And I try to be specific, but sometimes I'm not a musician, so I don't know. I'm like, I think this is a minor key and I want it to be not a minor key, or whatever it is. I'm like, if it's not, then I'm sorry and I messed up, And but yeah, that's kind of was the process with him. And again, I know I frustrated him at times with my final cut.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, when is the final cut?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure even when you just subtract like a handful of frames, it probably throws it off a little bit too. Like every little bit matters.
Shifts and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. But it was a really good process. And he did most of his writing on his own after I'd sent 10 tracks to him and he got the feel. He's a filmmaker himself. He writes and directs, so he kind of understands like beats, emotional beats, and story beats and stuff too. So for him, it's just second nature, and he's just like he's writing. Just beautiful stuff. Like you've heard it. It's really cool. So
yeah, dang nice, man. So
yeah.
At this point, now you're on the kind of festival run. Like you've submitted it. It's now completely final. I think you mentioned when you sent me a cut that it was still needed to do like one last like sound mix or something and maybe a little color, but
I would say it's 97% final now. There's still a few tweaks I'm making this coming weekend. I just got the final score from Justin. So he did what he calls his beauty pass, which just means he adds a few more layers of instruments onto melodies that are already there and stuff. And I was actually listening to it on our walk tonight because I was like, I want to listen to the new score, and it sounds awesome. As you can imagine, he takes what he already has that was really good and just makes it better.
Yeah.
And so I need to put that in there, kind of like go listen to it again, because when you add like a string section, the music might be a little louder, so you got to bring it down. Just kind of like mixing it so that all the vocals are good and everything. but yeah, other than that, like all the visuals are done, all the B-roll and the photos, which, oh my gosh, fighting the Santas to get their photos. You would think they would want to send me everything they have,
Yeah.
but it took so long. Sometimes I would have to get, and if they watch this, I'm just being honest, guys. Sometimes it took 2 or 3 or 4 times to get the photos I needed because either I didn't communicate well enough or they just didn't know what I was asking for.
Yeah.
And, I had to be more specific. Or sometimes it changed because the cut changed. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, well, now we need this and, et cetera. So I can only imagine somebody doing like a historical documentary that with people that they don't have access to or something.
Oh,
That'd be
yeah.
even more difficult. And so, I mean, luckily I had quick access to almost everybody we interviewed. So, I was really lucky in the fact that most of them had videos, most of them had photos, and they were able to get them to me because I wanted to show them being Santa. I didn't want to just
Yeah.
hear about it. You know what I mean? So I wanted to see them actually doing it as much as we could without actually like following them around with the camera all the time, which I feel like would have been a different movie anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. My day job, part of my day job is editing this show where these two young ladies talk about like classic like code era movies. And sometimes they pick some obscure ones, man, and it's really frustrating when I go to YouTube and like, nope, not even a movie trailer for this. No footage
oh
to pull.
gosh.
Go to
Yeah.
Google, like all the photos are low
Yeah.
res, and I'm like, what am
Oh
I gonna?
God.
You guys are talking for 30 minutes, and I'm like cutting between 3 cameras, trying to fill up like or take out like empty spaces, and I've got nothing to fill in. So
Nothing to
I
add
feel
to
that,
it.
man.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when it's hard to source B-roll, it can be
Yep.
real tough editing wise, and you don't want to lose engagement for the audience. That's for
Right,
sure.
exactly. Yeah, you want to keep it interesting visually, even though the audio and what's being
Hmm.
said might be really interesting, you still want to, it's a movie,
Yeah,
so you got to keep the
yeah,
visuals interesting. But yeah, I can imagine, especially that era of movies. Oh man, like I'm sure there's some real obscure stuff.
yeah.
Wow,
Like
that's tough.
there's the popular ones that come up, but
Yeah.
sometimes even those, I'm like, oh man, there's like one 360p trailer and
Oh,
like stuff.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
well,
What are
um,
you gonna do?
yeah, it's like I have to just make a textured background and like keep it small. Like I can only
Exactly.
enlarge it so much, and
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
but
I totally get
yeah,
it.
man.
Yep.
But so now you're in kind of the going for festivals and all that. What's
Yeah,
kind of your rollout looking like? I know you mentioned coming to Riverside pretty soon. I'm sure
yeah.
it's gotten admitted in some other places or selected in other places.
Yeah. Well, I think I've submitted to a little over 20 festivals across the United States and even in Australia, actually. I
Okay.
submitted to the Melbourne Film Festival because one of our Santas is from Melbourne. So
Nice.
I thought
Yeah.
that was cool. Little tie in there. But yeah, so we were able to be selected into the Atlanta Doc Fest, which is really cool. It's all documentaries. And so they had like 3 days of live screenings, and then they had an online portion of their festival as well with films that they wanted to be able to program, but they just couldn't for one reason or another,
Mhm.
time wise, etc. And our film was one of those that got to be in the online portion, which is really cool. So we got a couple weeks where we were able to screen online essentially as part of their festival, which was cool.
Nice.
And then we've got the Riverside International Film Festival coming up in April, which will be really cool to be out there. I'm planning on traveling out there too to be able to be there when the screening is and do some Q&A and hopefully just have some good networking opportunities and stuff there. Plus, I love California. I grew up there, so I'm very much a California guy at heart.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
like, hey, a chance to get it back out there. That's good. That's good for me.
Yeah.
And then we're waiting on hearing back from all sorts. We're hoping that we can get into, like, we shot in Indiana, so we're hoping we can get into a few out there. There's one called the Heartland Film Festival in Indianapolis, which is a pretty big one every year. We're hoping to get into there, and then Buffalo, of course, we shot there. So anywhere we've shot, essentially, we've trying to get into festivals there, just because it's like, hey, we filmed here, and there will be a lot of interest in the movie and people coming out to see it and things like that. So as far as like anything beyond that, I'm not totally sure what distribution looks like, or
Mhm.
I may go the self-distribution route, just depending on how the festival circuit goes and kind of like the buzz and stuff and all that. But right now we're just in the early stages, and that's kind of why I reached out, because I mean we had known each other before, and I knew you were a filmmaker and did your had your podcast and stuff, and I was like, you know what, why not send it over and see what you think, and get some honest feedback, because honestly I feel like people who are filmmakers themselves, they can give honest feedback without being like a jerk about it. I don't know, because like you understand what goes into it, but you can say, hey, like I really like this, I didn't like this aspect, whatever, and I don't know, I'm always seeking that out from filmmakers, because they'll be honest with you but not like rude about it, at the same time, like, because they get what goes into making the film, which is why I like festivals too, because like most of the people there are filmmakers, and so they get the blood, sweat, and tears that go into a project. And so they're, even if it's not like their thing, they're not going to like sit there and be like, oh, that shit sucked. Like,
because if you're involved in it in any way, it's like for me, there's really, and I may not have even put this in my initial message back to you, and maybe we don't want to get into it here, but there's like only one thing I bumped on that you did talk about earlier already, but it's like I already know. It's like I can imagine the situation you're in, and it's that room you were talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's I'm like, I know, I can only imagine that that's probably all they had, and it was like a short amount of time.
Yeah.
You have to use this. Because there is a fair amount of time spent in there, but it's like but yeah, it's like on my end, it's like, yep, I 100% understand. The amount of times I've been stuck in a, shooting some entertainment stuff in like a dark nightclub, and my lens only opens up to f4, so my ISO is and people were like, well, it's really noisy. I'm like, well, I can't be shooting. Can't be shooting 1.8 on everything over here.
Right. So, exactly. No. Yeah. That's
I get it.
That was my one thing, and I actually. Generally, there's only a few times in the whole movie that we cut from an interview in that room to another interview in that room, because I actually try to always cut from an interview in that room to an interview in another place, just to make sure it didn't feel super repetitive. And thank God we were able to fit 2 cameras in there, so it at least had we at least had 2 angles. But yeah, that was literally, man, I just wish that you could understand how, like, okay, so you've been to convention centers before, and it was kind of an older one. So where they do like a lot of times like the information booth or the ticket booth at the very front of the where before you go into the main hall and stuff. Yeah. That was the room we were in. Like we just shut the wall thing down and turn all the lights off and just used our lights. And that was the room. It was probably, I want to say maybe like an 8 by 11 or 10. Yeah, it was so small. That's the width was small. Yeah. So
and that's the stuff where it's like, when that background, it's like that's a feat of filmmaking at that point. Now I actually just
dude, I'll send you some behind the scenes pictures.
I think I saw one. I think you put one on Instagram.
I probably did.
But I actually just this past Monday I'm doing a friend of mine and I are trying to do like a short doc. We'll see where it goes, but on this guy, he's like an old OG. He lives in Hollywood. And he was one of the suspects when they were looking for Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker back. He was a suspect that got like picked up, and the cops were like kind of harassing him, I guess, because they thought it was him for these reasons. So we were talking to him, and I guess when Netflix did that documentary, I haven't watched it yet, so I need to see it now. But apparently he's like in it, but they never like asked him permission, never contacted him or something. And he's like,
that's crazy.
There's a small
so he's pissed about that a little bit.
A little bit, just a little like, man, aren't they supposed, like, it's Netflix, aren't they supposed to, but yeah, we were shooting in his like super tiny apartment, and he's got like all kinds of posters and shelves with like books and VHS tapes. It's like, it's very textured and kind of cool, but we're just like, he's just sitting in the corner, man. It's like the wall right behind him.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, I can't get any shallow depth of field. There's like a Dick Van Dyke poster like right behind him next to his head, and it's like as in focus as him. I'm like, oh god, that's something some other filmmaker's gonna talk about. Like, why didn't you move that poster? Or whatever.
You're like, there's no way to do it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna move this guy's house around.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I completely feel that, man.
Yeah, it's the trials and tribulations,
Yeah.
So, but you got to get it done. And the story, I always say content's king. If the story is
Yeah.
good and the people
Yep.
you're interviewing are compelling, like it doesn't necessarily matter
Yeah.
where it is. I mean, and
Mhm.
or even like the quality. I mean, like, yeah, I wanted to have a good quality, but at the same time, like the story is the main thing. So if the
Yeah.
quality suffers a little bit for that, then I'm okay
Yeah.
with that, you know? So,
Yeah.
and because we had so many good interviewees in that room, it was like, we're just going to have to roll with this.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we got, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it was my first ever feature length project. And, yeah, I mean, I've done some documentary stuff in the past, but nothing like quite like this. And so I'm kind of got the documentary bug. I'm not gonna lie. Like
Yeah.
it's so much fun. Like, and just like telling real stories is really cool. And I'm thinking about doing something whiskey related next. So we'll see where that goes. But
Yeah.
I kind of got an idea of doing something Tennessee whiskey related. I live here, so I might as well, you know. So
Yeah.
it's
That's a good idea. There's
yeah,
and there's a good whiskey history there, man,
a
between
lot. Yeah.
like the Jack Daniels and Uncle
Yep.
Nearest, and of course Nelson Greenbrier, Belle Meade, and all
Yeah.
that. There's like a
There's
lot
a
to
lot.
Dickel. There's a lot to tackle
Hmm.
down there. So that'd be
Yeah.
cool. I'd be into
Yeah.
that. You let me
Yeah.
know if I can afford it.
I will. Yeah, for
I'll fly
sure.
out and help shoot with you or something.
That'd be fun. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, no, I was actually literally just talking to my wife about that earlier. I was like, I think Tennessee whiskey is such a different thing than like Kentucky bourbon too,
Hmm.
and it's like you got this very own identity and stuff. And
Hmm.
there's, like you said, a lot of history that goes back and forth with different distillers that are still around and that aren't still around.
Yeah.
And actually, we're going to Jack Daniels this coming Saturday for
Nice.
a tour and stuff. And I've been a couple times, but we're doing like a more extended tour there and stuff, so it'll be fun. But yeah, I'm just like, I'm here. I can figure out a way to get access to these people. I can, find some historians and stuff, and just sit down and just kind of like the Santa thing, just start shooting and see
Hmm.
where the hell it goes.
Yeah, damn, I'm
So
jealous now. I was like, it's such a good idea. Like you definitely need to do it. Like just
yeah,
the Tennessee whiskey specific.
yeah,
Funny
yeah.
enough, I
So
still need to see if they want to do my podcast at some point, but I moved to Hollywood in November, and like literally 2 blocks away from me is a distillery that opened not that long ago, just several years
that's
ago,
cool.
Hollywood Distillery. They do mainly vodka, like that's what they do there. It's like
Yeah.
date-based vodka,
Hmm.
and then they like source a bourbon and a rye. So I toured there like a week after I moved in here. I was like, I live next to the distillery. Let's go.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I need to see if maybe they want to hop on the podcast soon.
yeah.
But
Yeah, they
yeah,
totally
that could be
should. That'd
cool.
be awesome. It'd be
But
cool to hear about why they decided to start a distillery in the middle of Hollywood,
yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah.
that's
No,
cool.
it's interesting. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
man.
awesome.
I mean, I guess we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to have had you on to talk about, I love to talk to different filmmakers, and especially about like workflow and process, and like, again, like the go-getters that just go and get it done. So, talking to you has been cool, and it's inspiring, to be honest. I'm like, man, all right, I gotta keep like staying the course and do my
Yeah.
thing. Like, and tough when you get busy. And my friend and I, we're definitely in that trap of like we talk about it more than just doing it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
just
yeah.
let's just hit record and go. Let's just do it.
Yeah, see
So
what happens.
yeah, so this definitely inspired me. Um
Awesome, man. I love it. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we got to do as fellow filmmakers in the trenches, man. Like, who are now, older than we used to be,
mhm.
and but still have that. We have a lot to give, and we have a lot to to create. And I think we just got to like give ourselves the time and the space for it, and you know, hate to say it, but not make excuses. I mean, I
Yeah.
did the same thing,
Yeah.
or let like being afraid of not perfect stop us from just like doing it and like putting it out on YouTube, and who cares? Like, it's like
Mhm.
this is what we made, and then we're gonna make something else, and we're gonna do this and that, and so on and so forth. And then you just never know what might happen in the future. And it just, and as long as you love the process, which I know you do,
Yeah.
uh that's the reward. It's like
Mhm.
we get to like make movies, man. That's pretty
Yeah.
fucking cool. Like
Yeah,
it really is. Like,
100%.
so yeah, but cool, man. It's been great. We'll have to get up on here some other time. Maybe we'll review a movie together or something. That'd be kind of fun. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, tear
make
apart
that
some other
happen.
filmmakers stuff.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, thanks again for coming on. Any, I guess, last kind of shout outs on screenings or anything, or when we can expect release that you want to throw out, anything like that?
Yeah. So as far as like expecting a release, we're hoping for some kind of like larger release by the end of the year, and in time for Christmas and holidays and all that kind of stuff. What that looks like, I'm not totally sure yet. Again, it kind of depends on like how the festivals go. If we get any like distributors trying to like look for it, we might go the self-distribution route. There's so many good ways to do that now with streaming platforms, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it will eventually be out there. I don't know exactly to give a solid thing, but right now, go to our Instagram page, which is Instagram.com. But if you're on Instagram, it's just Making Santa Real. That's all it is. Super easy to find. Follow us on Instagram. We'll put information about screenings or, when the film is in a more public way released. We'll definitely put stuff on there. So if you want to follow the journey, that's the best way to do it. And we're still working on getting a website up, but the Instagram page is a perfect place. We'll post all the details on there. So
yeah, right on, man.
Cool.
Well, cool. Thanks for coming on. I'll catch you next time.
Absolutely, man. All right.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Drinks and a Movie podcast. You can now find us on Instagram at Drinks and a Movie Pod, where we'll be posting photos from all the various films that we discuss. You can also email us at drinksandamoviepod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and thank you for listening.